I had never thought much of the house before I moved in. The realtor spoke of its charm, its age, the character it held. It was old, a little run down, but nothing out of the ordinary for a home of its age. I thought at first it would be the perfect place for a fresh start. Quiet neighborhood, no neighbors to speak of on either side. Just me in the house, alone in its comforting silence. It should have been peaceful, but then the sound started. At first, I chalked it up to the house settling. Old houses creak, they groan. The wind whispers through the cracks in the windows. The floors bend under weight. I reassured myself with these thoughts as I lay in bed late at night, hearing the faintest of sounds. Footsteps. Slow, measured, deliberate, as though someone was walking just out of sight. The first few nights, I told myself it was nothing. I even convinced myself I was hearing things, the sounds my mind conjured up to break the stillness. It wasn't until I noticed the shadows that I began to doubt myself. The first shadow was small, a fleeting blur in the corner of my eye as I walked down the hallway. When I looked directly, it was gone, but I swore I saw it, a flicker of something moving just beneath the plastered walls, just beyond my reach. I told myself I was tired, maybe I was imagining it. There were no shadows, no shapes, just my mind playing tricks on me. But then they started to grow. At night, when the darkness felt thick and heavy around me, I would feel it, an oppressive presence, like the weight of someone standing just behind me, breathing faintly down my neck. I'd whip around, but of course there was nothing there. Not a sound, not a breath, just the silence, and the sense that something was watching me. A week later, I found my books out of place. A stack I had neatly organized on the table in the living room was no longer where I had left it. At first, I assumed I had moved them absent-mindedly, perhaps in a rush to tidy up. But then I began noticing more things. Cups that had been left on the kitchen counter were now missing. The coat I could have sworn I hung in the hallway had vanished. It was as though the house itself was swallowing them up, moving things when I wasn't looking. One evening, I returned home from work to find the kitchen chair overturned, the silverware scattered across the floor in a haphazard mess. No one else could have been there. I hadn't heard a thing, no crash, no bang, nothing. The door had been locked. I had been alone. I began to wonder if I was losing my grip on reality. Maybe I was sleepwalking, or maybe I had forgotten things in a moment of confusion. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more the events seemed to escalate. I remember one particular night, the storm raging outside, the wind howling against the walls. I was sitting on the couch, a blanket draped over me, trying to ignore the gnawing unease that had settled deep within me. The house creaked under the weight of the storm, and I tried to focus on the soft hum of the television. Then it came. A soft scratching noise, like nails dragging against wood. It started slow, almost imperceptible, but then it grew louder, more frantic. The sound seemed to come from within the walls themselves, a soft, rhythmic scraping, as though something was trying to claw its way out. I froze, my blood running cold. I wasn't imagining it this time. It was real. The sound reverberated through the walls, vibrating the air. My heart pounded as I stood, inching closer to the source. The noise came from behind the fireplace, just below the mantel. A dark thought wormed its way into my mind. What if I wasn't alone here? I had never dared open the fireplace, but in that moment, I felt an uncontrollable urge to do so. My hand shook as I reached for the iron poker beside the hearth. The scratching continued, now accompanied by a low, guttural sound, like someone, or something, was breathing heavily from inside the wall. I didn't hesitate. With one swift motion, I pried open the old bricks, the dust and ash falling away as I pulled at the crumbling mortar. There was something inside, something moving. Before I could react, a loud crack echoed in the room, and the fireplace gave way. A small, narrow hole had opened up, just large enough for something to slip through. My pulse raced, my breath quickened, and yet I couldn't stop myself from looking inside. What I saw made my blood run even colder. At first I thought it was nothing, a trick of the light, perhaps. But then, from the blackness behind the wall, a pair of pale eyes glinted in the shadows. They weren't human, no. They were far too wide, too empty, too still. Then came the whisper. Soft at first, like a breath against my ear. "Help me." It was the voice of a child. I stumbled back, heart racing in my chest. The scratching stopped. The eyes, still watching, seemed to pierce through the darkness, boring into my soul. For a long moment I didn't move, didn't dare to breathe. But the voice, oh, it wouldn't stop. It came again. "Help me." I ran. For the next few days I barely slept. I couldn't bring myself to leave the house, but neither could I stay in the house without feeling like something was lurking just beyond my sight. The feeling grew more insistent, the presence more oppressive. It followed me from room to room, whispered in the dark, brushed against me in the quiet moments. I could feel its touch, cold and wet, like a breath on my neck. I did what I could to ignore it, to convince myself that I was simply unraveling, that the isolation was getting to me. But then things began to escalate. The shadows returned. Not small flickers now, but long stretching shapes that moved across the walls and floors. A figure, tall, thin, grotesque, hovered just at the edge of my vision. It never fully stepped into the light, but I could feel it, watching, waiting. Every night it drew closer, until one evening I woke to find it standing at the foot of my bed. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. I could only stare at the thing, its eyes empty voids, its skin ashen and cracked like dried leather. And then the whispers came again. "Help me." This time it wasn't the voice of a child. No, this was something darker, something older. It seemed to curl around me, tugging at the edges of my sanity. The figure leaned closer, and I could feel its breath, icy and foul, on my face. The smell of decay filled the room, suffocating me. With trembling hands, I reached out for the lamp on the bedside table. I fumbled for the switch, my heart racing, and when I flicked it on, the figure was gone. The room was empty, save for the haunting silence. The whispers, they still echoed. Faint at first, then louder, clearer. "Help me!" I couldn't bear it anymore. I left. I packed whatever I could carry, grabbed my keys, and bolted for the door. But when I opened it, I froze. The hallway was different. The walls had stretched, lengthened, as if the house itself was bending and distorting. I turned to leave, but something held me in place. A shadow crawled across the floor, creeping toward me, twisting unnaturally, growing longer, stretching wider. "Help me!" I couldn't escape it. And now it had me.